All right, peace, everybody. Welcome to the second class in a six-part series of yoga philosophy. This particular yoga that we are going into tonight is the yoga of action, i.e., karma yoga. Um, and I like to use Swami Vivekananda because he was the catalyst for yoga in the West. Like he literally listened to his guru. His guru told him go, spread the teachings in the West. And he came over here, didn't know anybody, didn't have any money, and all he had to you know depend on was his teaching. So he taught on street corners. He gave free lectures and everything. And most of them centered around yoga. And actually, karma yoga was his favorite yoga. So he had a whole lot to say about karma yoga. So, uh, so I use Swami Vivekananda. So this is also Swami Vivekananda, and he stated that this I and mind causes the whole misery. With the sense of possession comes selfishness, and selfishness brings on misery. So that's kind of like the problem is this selfishness, and the solution to that selfishness is karma yoga. And so that's kind of like where we're going. So, listen to this class tonight and participate in this class in the framework of alleviating selfishness. All right. So, karma is derived from the Sanskrit word kri. And kri, K-R-I, means to do. So, karma is translated as action. And I know most people, when we talk about karma, we talk in the sense of like good karma, bad karma, which um, is mostly the result of karma, but that's not karma. Karma is action. So the fruits or the results of karma is just that, but it's not actually karma. And then we talked about it earlier in this slide that yoga means union. So then karma yoga is translated as the union of the divine through action. So it's the union of individual consciousness with universal consciousness through the vehicle of action. So that's the foundation of karma yoga. All right. So last class we also talked about the Bhagavad Gita, and so inside the Bhagavad Gita, uh, karma yoga is considered to be one of the most effective means of spiritual development. So remember, in the Bhagavad Gita, we outlined three paths of yoga: karma yoga, jnana yoga, and bhakti yoga. And Raja Yoga came later with Patanjali. So we just said Karma Yoga was first outlined in the Bhagavad Gita, and that's the 700 verse Hindu scripture estimated to date back somewhere between the 5th and 2nd century BCE. The Bhagavad Gita offered several approaches to liberation from suffering, self realization, and connection with the divine, of which karma yoga is arguably the most practical. The text highlights the importance of selfless action in which service is offered from the heart with full attention and awareness. Attachment to the outcome of one's actions is said to bring suffering, particularly when something is expected in return. In order to truly practice karma yoga, the practitioner must act with no expectation. So that was kind of what was laid out in the Bhagavad Gita. And so, I know a lot of people chose karma yoga as their particular self expression of, the yoga path. And once we start to see this foundation of acting without expectation, now we see the difficulty or the challenge, not the difficulty, but the challenge of karma yoga. Because very rarely do people act without attachment to some expectation. So, for example, if you are walking out of the store and you hold the door for somebody and they don't say thank you, most people get upset because you are attached to some type of outcome. You expected the person to be uh, thankful for what you did, and you expect the person to outwardly express their thankfulness, right? So they might be thankful, but they might not have said it. But you expected some reaction, and you didn't get it. So now, most people get upset, like, oh, I'm not holding the door for somebody, or you can't say thank you. Like that's often the attitude that we take when we, do a small act of service for somebody else. We are um, attached to some particular outcome that we expect, and when we don't get it, it now upsets us. So you can kind of see, where the challenge comes in with karma yoga. So we also talked about in the Bhagavad Gita, it was a conversation between Arjuna, which is a warrior who was expected to fight in the war, and Lord Krishna, which was an avatar of God. So he was the chariot driver, and Arjuna was his passenger, and he was expected to fight in the war. So narration described in the Bhagavad Gita in chapter 3 between Arjuna and Lord Krishna explains the true nature of karma or of a karma. Arjuna asked Lord Krishna, why are you urging me to fight in this Mahabharat war? As fighting in the war is not good karma. So remember, we talked about also in the intro that the people who were on the other side of were on the people who he had to fight was his teachers, his friends, his family members. So all people who he knew were the people who he had to fight the war against. So you can see his reservations for participating in such a war. He like, why should I have to fight my teachers, my family, friends and things like that? So you can kind of see his reservation. So Lord Krishna said that karma is to make us realize the true self. So that's kind of like all of the yoga paths actually is to help one realize our true self. Because remember, we talked about not knowing who we really are. So karma is to make us realize the true self. It liberates us from the cycle of birth and death, samsara, which is that cycle, that birth and death cycle. And when we perform our prescribed duties for divine satisfaction. On the other hand, if karma is attached with the outcome desire of work, it binds us to this material world. And so now you can also see that another goal of this path of karma yoga is to be detached from the material world. So the more karma that you accrue, the more ties you have to this material world, and the harder it is to escape from the cycle of birth and death, aka samsara. So this comes out of the Bhagavad Gita, chapter 3, verse 5, and chapter 3 is actually dedicated to karma yoga. So I'm gonna use a lot of verses from that chapter in this particular presentation. So chapter 3, verse 5 says, there is no one who can remain without action, even for a moment. Indeed, all beings are compelled to act by their qualities born of material nature. So what was going on in this particular case is that he was asking, like, why do you want me to participate in this war? And his his answer to to not participate in the war was to go off in the mountains and not do anything. And so Krishna's response to him was that no one can remain without action, even for a moment. So his answer to him was that even if you leave and don't fight, you're still performing an action, but the action is inaction. So you're consciously choosing not to do anything, which is still an action. So you can see why this, verse is profound, because it says no one can remain without action even for a moment. So even if you choose not to do nothing, you're still doing something. All right. So before we move on, that's kind of like my intro or my foundation. So anybody have any questions, comments so far?
No, sir.
All right. Everything making sense? Clear so far?
Yes.
Okay, cool. All right. With no questions or comments, we can move on. So this is now to add a distinction between karma and karma yoga, because people often confuse the two, especially in India. So, like, for example, if somebody who's a successful CEO or a businessman and he built, $1 billion industry or whatever, and he passes away, his obituary, that's printed will often say he was a good karma yogi because he did all of this work. But as we'll see, just because he did a lot of work, that doesn't mean he was a karma yogi. That means he just did a lot of work. All right. So what is karma? Karma is a sense. Somebody read this for me. I don't want to do all the talking. So if somebody can read this for me, please.
I don't mind reading. What is karma? Karma is a Sanskrit word that means action or deed. Anything that a person does, whether physical or mental, is karma. Karma is the sum total of all of our acts, both in this life and our earlier lives. Karma relates not just to the action, but also the result of the action. The consequence cannot be separated from the action itself. Karma accumulates when actions are done with a selfless motive, when you expect something from the outcomes of the action. However, when the action is done without this expectation, it is liberating. No karma is accumulated. This process continues until you attain a zero balance, i.e., no karma remains. Only then are you free. This means you break the cycle of samsara, the cycle of constant death and rebirth. Karma is not only the physical work, but the process of mental thinking also. When yoga is added to karma, it becomes a practice of union with one's true self through action. Hence, every action which brings our awareness inward to knowing the true self is a part of karma yoga.
Excellent. And I'm glad you chose to read that, because I know just a few days ago you asked me what the difference, or I don't know if you said what's the difference between karma and karma yoga, or you asked what was karma. So, I think it was only fitting for you to read this particular slide.
Yeah, I think I asked, oh yeah, I did ask what was the difference, because I had talked to you about like going deep into what karma was, and you said that that's what we would be talking about as far as karma yoga. So I wasn't aware that they were one and the same. So yes.
Cool. Cool. Somebody got questions or comments about that? That was a pretty deep slide, and hopefully, that cleared up some misconceptions about the difference between karma and karma yoga.
I do have a question, instructor.
Yep.
So karma is action or a deed, but then a little bit lower, it says karma accumulates. So karma accumulating, are we talking about now karma is something that could be, now it's a substance, it's something that could be accumulated, or something, like I guess it's referred to here as almost like a debt. So that how is the action and deed related to the karma that can be accumulated?
That's excellent. So the next slide is gonna talk about that. So yeah, just hold on for like 2 seconds. We're gonna get right to that in the next slide, actually.
Okay, thank you.
Tyler, did you have something?
Oh no, I apologize. I muted on accident.
Okay, cool.
Instructor, I got a question.
Yep.
Yeah, so as I'm listening to you kind of explain this, and I'm still thinking about that billionaire in India, and I'm like, okay, all right, karma's action, and you were just saying how people get it confused, and I get the idea that you could be doing all this work, but maybe you're doing it for the wrong reasons. So it's just kind of interesting because we would never know, like the human would never know whether or not a person is a true yogi, a true karma yogi, because we don't know the heart. So how could we really assess whether or not somebody, like is a true yogi, a karma yogi, even if they are doing a whole bunch of action and taking stands and taking vows and doing, because we don't really know the heart.
Exactly. So who can answer who's a karma yogi and who's not? That's a great assessment. That's excellent.
Peace.
Peace.
I was thinking about when I was younger and I was leaving the church with my mom, or I think we were just talking, and I had asked her, is it fair for a person to just behave by the rules of the 10 Commandments or the rules of Christianity just so they won't go to hell or just to go to heaven? Like, does that make somebody a good person just because their intentions of doing good things is to get somewhere? And she had trouble answering that. So I feel like karma definitely fills the gap of understanding of intentions behind people's actions.
Yeah, that's actually a great assessment too. And one of the teachers that I listened to, his name is Sai Guru, and he stated in his discourse of karma, and that's why I like the path of karma yoga, because it doesn't have any necessity for an underlying belief or faith or anything like that. It's just about selfless action. So, you could be an atheist and be karma yoga, or you could be the most devout Christian and be a karma yogi. So it's not relegated to a specific faith. But what he said was, the idea of heaven puts in people's mind that it's something better elsewhere. So you don't really live fully here because you're so worried about going somewhere else. So you're never in the present moment because you're always thinking about, oh yeah, I want to get to that higher place or the upper room, or whatever we want to call it. But this karma yoga path is about living in the here and the now. So I'm glad that cleared that up for you.
Yeah, and to speak like a correlation between what you're offering now, instructor, and biblical, it says in James 1st, 22nd and 5th, it said, "Be ye hearers of, be ye not hearers of the word, but doers of the word. If any man be a hearer of the word and not a doer, he is like unto a man beholding his natural face in a glass. So
Wow.
it's correlating the same thing in a biblical sense. It's saying and speaking to karma yoga, as it were, as you're explaining it now.
Excellent.
Excuse me.
Yeah. 1 second. I got you, Adrian, and then Kim. But no, I appreciate that sharing. I appreciate that Bible verse, and you know, there is only the truth. So again, it goes right back to that parable with the elephant. You know, everybody has their specific expression and interaction and understanding of the truth, but there is only the truth. So the truth is the elephant, but the ear is the Bible, and the tail is, you know, whatever, the Quran. So yeah, it definitely speaks directly to that.
And you will find the truth in all of those texts.
Yeah, exactly right.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, instructor.
Thank you. I appreciate you. All right, Adrian, and then Kim.
Yep, I was going to ask Instructor Vaughn, do you mind, Vaughn, excuse me, giving us that Bible verse again, please?
It's James, Book of James 1, first chapter 22 through 25.
Thank you, Instructor.
Yes, you're welcome.
All right, Kim.
Just real quick, just that quick segment that we just talked about, relating it to like heaven, it reminds me of the four natural enemies, and how death and time being a natural enemy, and how we discussed on that class, how a lot of people don't live in a moment or live in the present. They live for the afterlife, which is why it's essentially an enemy to us as people, and us as, you know, living in this life right now. So it's just interesting to me how everything always correlates and tie back into one another, and they all flow together. And for us to begin this lesson, it kind of, for me, just brings everything around and ties it all up. Like, this is why this is a natural enemy, but how we can also get it to where it won't be an enemy for us is through karma yoga, because we're talking about living here now and all our actions being selfless, and not worrying about where the actions will get us in a place like after we're already gone. So I just appreciate that. So thank you.
Yep, no problem. Thank you. Yeah, and that's definitely a plug. So we have that class on YouTube. If you haven't seen it, it's called The Four Natural Enemies. It's right on our 36 Chamber YouTube page. You can just type it right in, or whatever, and then watch that, and you'll get to, you know, experience the reference that she's referring to.
Hey, instructor.
Right. Yep, go ahead.
Instructor. I just wanted to just as Kimmy was sharing, it just somewhat occurred like, man, like even if people are in pursuit of a heavenly reward, it's still selfish. You know, I mean, like a lot of times we just look at it like,
Exactly.
okay, you know, you're doing right, like you're trying to, you know, do right, but it's like, nah, when you unpack that, it's like, nah, you ain't, you know, like it's something in that, you know, it's some fear in there, it's some inauthenticity to an extent, you know, there's some inauthenticity in that pursuit of the, you know, after, you know, I guess if you want to call it the afterlife, heaven versus being in heaven. Anyway, I just thought it sort of, when she said that, it sort of came to me that way. So.
Exactly, and that's a huge point. And so you see now where the distinction lies. Like, are you really a good person if you only do good to achieve some reward? Or are you just pretending?
Yeah, that was my takeaway from it because I was
Mhm.
like, if you know, like, well, I don't know about everybody else, but I've always heard like if it's karma, that means if you do good, good things that happen to you. If you do bad, bad things that happen to you. And that's like how it was taught. And so now it's having like when you do good, you're just doing good to do it. And I feel like it gives like some source of relaxation because a lot of times you could be a good person, play by all the rules, do everything right, and bad things or life can just happen to you. And you haven't, I guess, done anything to quote unquote deserve it. But does that mean you stop being a good person all of a sudden because of that? So it was just putting that in perspective as to not so much your reward in heaven, but even your reward on earth. Like, will you continue to do good or be the person you are even when the odds are against you?
Um, yeah, what made me come to mind, what came to mind for me is the constructs of why religion was formulated. Because what we're discussing, uh, for a person to do good just for the sake of doing good, that's a special kind of person, right? Uh, there's a certain discipline, there's a certain enlightenment about a person like that. However, on the other side, uh, and I'm going to say this because this is coming to mind right now, those of us who were in the caves of our minds needed an impetus to do good. You needed a reason and a wherewithal. So this heaven had to be created as a place for you to go to if you do good. It's almost akin to Santa Claus coming to you, and he's only going to bring you a toy if you've been good all year. If you haven't been good all year, your name goes on this list. And, you know, it seems like that story has been repeated over and over again for those of us who live in the caves of carnal thinking. That you have to be rewarded in order to do something. There has to be something on the other end of it for you, a gift or a reward, if you will. And it just brings now to mind uh, the reason that institutionalized religion came to bear. However, in looking at Bible, and even as offered earlier, Bible correlates with what is being shared here. So to instructors' point, truth is truth, and truth can be found anywhere, irrespective of Bible, Quran, Bhagavad Gita, or the like. You're still going to find this theme of truth. So that was interesting as I'm listening and just correlating in my own mind how this corresponds to what is written in the Bible.
Yep, yeah, I definitely appreciate that. And that's exactly where my mind went too. So we definitely vibrating on the same frequency. All right, anybody else, questions, comments before we move on?
This is LaKenya.
Peace.
Peace. I'm glad that Brother Kenyatta brought that up about uh I goodness, excuse me for a second. Well, I'll just talk even when it comes to tithing, um, the fear that I feel preachers put on um, people to tithe. You're not getting your blessings unless you tithe, or these things are happening in your life because you're not tithing. And I used to have conversations with people when it came to tithing, and even talking to some family members and uh, learning what the amounts that they give, and it just made me so uncomfortable to where I had to say something about it. And even hearing about how some pastors, well, some churches require um, your your tax information, and they want to know what you're bringing in a year or whatever. And that fear that's put on people to do more to get. And um, I've always looked at that tithing, to me, my way of tithing or whatever was giving service, giving my time, just giving in a way that I choose to, and not doing it to get a reward from it. It just it's just a good feeling. Just knowing that someone has been taken care of. So it is that's just I'm glad we're having this conversation. And then also uh um I feel that the yoga resonates with me as well, of service. So that's what I wanted to share.
Excellent. Appreciate you saying that. So I'm glad you said that though, because hold on, you had a question or a comment, John?
Yes, I
Sorry.
do.
Hold on 1 second. So
Okay.
before we skip past that, I want to highlight something. So Lakinya said, when I give back, it feels good. So can you see how that feeling, that sense pleasure, is now a trap? Because the feel good comes from, in most cases, the person's reaction. So if you do good for somebody, and like, for example, if, a homeless person says, please, spare some change, I want to get something to eat. And then you give that person some food, and he says, no, I don't want the food, I want money. Can you see how that brings up something in you that doesn't necessarily feel good? Because again, even though we are doing good, we are doing acts of service, we are still attached to the expectation of a certain outcome. So, not to pick on you or anything like that, not even saying that's applicable to you, but again, I just am opening people's eyes, giving you the glasses to see through the trap.
Okay, not taking it as you picking on me or anything. It's not that I was looking for uh a thank you or a person's gratitude or anything. I could just give it and walk away. So um that was the feeling. Is that still a trap?
I mean, only you can answer that, but I just want others to recognize how it can be,
Okay.
and that was it. So, yeah, definitely not even saying that it was you or it's applicable, but just using your example as a teachable moment to see how it can be a trap.
Yeah.
And I see you, Tyler. So, John, and then Tyler.
Basically, I just wanted to piggyback on what you were saying earlier on how.
We don't piggyback. We
Okay.
veggie back or vegan back. Don't do two.
Right. Okay. All right. I feel what you're saying. I just want to talk about the same similar subject of how fear and reward is used when they holler about the tithing, and when most people, even use that for begging and to get stuff. And on the side of the road, sometimes you just look at the situation and be like, do I want to give this person something? They could be lying to me. They could actually be homeless. All these different things go through your mind when you do stuff like that. So it's so many aspects of a person's life that they go through. So if you ever been homeless, you might be sympathetic to that person. But then looking back on it, you might feel bitter because what you said, I don't want none of food, I want the money. So now I feel some kind of way because I was feeling sympathetic for you and you throwed it in my face. That happens all the time in the church. They give thousands of dollars to the church and they don't fix a dough, they don't buy a kid meal, they don't do nothing for the community. And then when they say they do it, they only do it because it's in front of the TV. So all of that is used. The whole base of all religion is fear, and that's why I like the yoga, and it really it opens my mind to a lot of different things because people don't understand that fear is the reason why most people do everything. That's all I wanted to say.
Excellent, thank you. Tyler, go ahead.
Peace. I just had a quick question. I was wondering, could the expectation actually like make you a better person? For example, instructor, you're putting on this event expecting us to learn. If you didn't have that expectation, I'm guessing like how would that affect you with that? Would you still want to learn as much in depth? Because I know you put a lot of time and energy to craft the information. So that was just my question.
Hold on, don't mute, okay? We want to have a conversation. So what gives you the idea that I'm expecting anybody to learn anything?
I think last week you said you were grateful, like you put a lot of energy, so you were grateful that we was learning. So that's what how I got that idea.
So you see, being grateful and expecting is two distinctly different things.
Right.
Make sense?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So one can be grateful and appreciative, but again, not have expectation. And I'm so glad that you chimed in. I appreciate you. Appreciate the bravery. And you know, for example, I know you. I don't recall you ever coming to the actual dojo space, but in the dojo space, we are grateful for everybody's attendance, participation, and everything. But right on the flip side of that coin, we are not attached to anybody being there. So even though we are grateful and thankful for every single individual that steps foot through the door, on the flip side of that, we aren't attached to anybody being there. So if nobody came, it's not like we're like, oh, we're
Right.
bad or anything is bad. So just being aware of that distinction of
Right.
being grateful, but at the same time not expecting anything. And it definitely is a practice and it is work to get to that particular place. But again, that's the practice of karma yoga.
Appreciate the clarification.
Yeah, no problem. Appreciate you. Instructor Aku, go ahead.
Peace, family. Really quickly, I just want to salute you, Tyler, for an excellent question and observation, young man. And two, I want to also say to Sister Kenya that the gratefulness is what is the feel good in your ability to give to others. And I think that part is what a lot of us that resonate with the karma yoga are dealing in, is the gratitude of being in a position to help or bless somebody else. And at the same time, adhering to the lesson that instructor has given us of not having an attachment to it. I think many of us, I'm gonna speak for myself, I know that I am still growing in that area because I walk in gratitude and I walk in a appreciation for being in a position to help other people. But at the same time, I'm still in a place where I do expect some appreciation or at least a thank you, because in a world of struggle and so many other people that could be benefiting from our efforts, for a person not to at least acknowledge that still causes me some trepidation. I just wanted to salute Tyler and hopefully bring Sister LaKenya, this same recognition for their gratitude and being able to bless other people. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank
Excellent.
you.
Thank you. Yep. Yep.
Yeah, and I think too, to that point, I think this is why it appears that just embracing a discipline as such is very challenging, in that in the curriculum, in curriculum and instruction, the whole premise of curriculum and instruction is a give, a take, punishment, consequence, reward. If you can remember in the last presentation, Pavlov's dog, Watson, salivating. If you hear a bell, you start to salivate, or the dog starts to salivate. All of these constructs are actually based on expectation. And all of us that are involved on this chat or outside of this chat were raised and were taught in that particular system. So again, it takes a certain type of person. It takes a certain caliber. And as the Honorable Elijah Muhammad says, that you need to be educated outside of this construct in order to actually know where you are and who you are. So again, to me, this conversation is fitting, to allow you to see who you are and what you have become, or what we have become, and now a shift in thinking, which is happening right now, with regard to a paradigmic shift in thinking, and even getting us to examine our own constructs as to, well, just as Instructor Koo offered, I still have an expectation. When I do something, I still want to be, a thank you or like, and most of us are, whether we choose to admit it or not, because we were raised in a construct that's built on it. So again, it really make you look at who you are, and what we have become and what we are becoming now. So thank you again, Instructor, for this, for bringing this.
Excellent. Yeah, thank you. I was gonna say that's a mic drop, so we're gonna have to move on from there. But and that's the thing though that we definitely want to point to, is that this is not easy, and that's where the work is. Like I mean, everything that, or mostly everything in this world, ties us or binds us to this world, and these paths are our escape. But again, that escape is not easy, because we're residing in the trap. So the first step to escaping the trap is to realize we're in a trap. And this is our first step on the way out, is to realize that we're in it. And so, with what you say, you definitely call forth that, yeah, this is the construct or the paradigm that binds us to this reality. is that everything that we're taught is pointing to blank. And so that thing now binds us, and this is our escape. So thank you. But yeah, we got to move on. All right. So we just talked about what karma is, and thank you everybody for the rich dialogue too. I appreciate that. That was excellent. So we talked about what karma is. So now this is the criteria for something to be karma. So the first one is that it's not just any kind of work. The work has to be done by a living body or a sentient being. And sentient means it's aware of its existence. So, for example, a machine making a car is not karma, even though work is being done, but it's not done by a living being who is sentient. So you can kind of see that distinction. So it's not just any work. Any work doesn't qualify as karma. It's work done by a living or sentient being. Next is a sense of agency, meaning I am doing it. So an example of what's not this is when you eat food and your stomach digests the food, even though the work is being done by the body or a living sentient being, there is no sense of agency or a sense of I'm doing it. The body is just doing it on its own. So you don't have control over whether your food gets digested or not, because the body does it naturally. So digestion of food is not karma. So those are the first two, is being done by a living body. It's a sense of agency. Next, there is a sense of enjoyment or suffering, i.e., there are results that we're working towards. So again, for example, a machine does a whole lot of work, but there is no sense of enjoyment or suffering, right? So, and I can kind of hear questions in people's minds, but we don't have to attach to this enjoyment or suffering, but there is a sense of enjoyment or suffering. So we don't have to give into it or, say, be mad and complain about it if there is a sense of not necessarily enjoying it, but you can still not enjoy it. Next, we have a sense of moral obligation. So, a sense of good or bad. So, for example, if a baby does something, they don't necessarily have a moral obligation to do something, right? They just do it. So there is no moral compass to say something is good or bad. They just act, right? Until they get that moral compass. So a baby, even though they are acting, even though there is a sense of enjoyment, even though, or a sense of enjoyment or suffering, even though they have a sense of agency and it's a living being, there isn't necessarily that moral compass to say what I'm doing is good or bad. So a baby isn't necessarily accruing karma, even though they are, meeting the first three criteria. They don't meet the fourth criteria, which is a moral obligation of something doing, a sense of good or bad. And also like animals. So a lion is killing a gazelle, but even though it's killing, we if we killed somebody, is we have a moral compass of good or bad, whereas an animal doesn't. An animal is doing it based upon their instincts. So, again, no karma is being accrued because they don't have that moral compass. And the last piece for the criteria is freedom of choice. So if a person is forced to do something bad or they unknowingly do something good, then no karma is accrued because they didn't exercise the freedom in choice of their actions. And then the sum of all these things is number 6, which is the cosmic result, aka good or bad karma. And this number 6 is what people normally relegate the definition of karma to, is this cosmic result, if it's a good or bad karma. So Hero, this is the answer to your question about accruing karma, right? We do actions that meet these criteria, and the results of those actions either provide us consequences, which would be, bad karma, or we discharge or dispel our karma because we're doing good things based upon these 5 criteria. So hopefully that totally clears up everything about karma, what karma is, what constitutes as karma, and good or bad karma. All right, so anybody have any questions or comments about that? I see you, Keela. Go ahead.
Yeah, sorry. So I
Oh, no,
kind of blinked out around the sense of agency part. And I remember you saying like the sentient is like, you being aware of you being, and the sense of agency saying I am doing it. Like, what is pretty much the difference? Because if you are a sentient, you kind of are already aware of you, right?
Yeah, so the sentient being part is kind of like Descartes when he said, I think, therefore I am. So that's the sentient part. But the sense of agency, meaning that I am doing it. So the example that I gave was you digesting food. So even though you are a living sentient being, the body is just digesting the food. You aren't consciously digesting food. So even though you are a living sentient being doing work, there is no I am doing it when it comes to digesting food. The body just does it automatically. So digestion doesn't count as karma because there's no sense of you doing it. It's just
Okay.
being done inside of the sentient being.
Thank you. I understand.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you for the question. Anybody else? Questions, comments? All right, moving
Yes.
on. Oh, go ahead.
Hi, you guys. I am really enjoying this class. I have a bit of arc eye, so I'm unable to read. That's why I didn't send this as a written message. I'm really enjoying this class, and I am. I can't read these things, but I will participate as much as possible. So
Yeah, all
yeah.
good. Yeah, we got you. So
Yeah, I'm not sure if
whenever
people know
you
what arc eye is, but it's sunburn on the eyeballs from welding.
oh
So
wow, no, we didn't know that.
yeah,
Well, yeah, we
you
definitely
can't.
still appreciate you being here, though.
Right on. I'm happy to be here.
Excellent.
All right.
hmm Somebody else had a question or a comment?
Just
I
one.
just,
Go ahead, Aaron. I'm sorry.
yeah, it's a quick question. I just wanted to make sure I was clear. So, like, to meet the standards of karma, you have to meet all of these for it to apply. Like, you can't have one without the other, or all of them without one.
Exactly right. Yeah. So this is the criteria for something to qualify as karma. So, like, for example, if you're, I'm gonna just use a touchy subject, but if you are a slave and you are doing work, you're not accruing karma because there's no freedom of choice in that. Or like, if you are driving and mistakenly hit somebody, but you didn't see them or they just walked in front of your path, like that's not bad karma because you didn't consciously do it. So it was no sense of agency, and I am doing it. And then there was also no this morality piece of, you know, good or bad. Like it was an accident. So you need all of these 5 things for it to qualify as karma.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
Just a comment on how this criteria was used by the Honorable Elijah Muhammad and also Yahshua or Jesus. There were Elijah Muhammad was Honorable Elijah Muhammad was sitting in his study, and some men brought a situation or a problem to the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. He said, well, you know, these 2 young people were caught in the act of fornication. What should we do? And Honorable Elijah Muhammad asked them, where did the act take place? Did it take place in the open, or did it take place where they were hidden? And they answered, well, it took place where they were, you know, hidden, you know, of course. And then he used this, he went through this criteria as a discernment of whether they were operating out of good or bad karma. Was it a sense of enjoyment? Was it a sense of agency that they were, instead of I am doing it, they were doing it, or they had a choice in what they were doing? Because again, they had a choice into where that act took place. Jesus used the same criteria when some men brought a woman to Jesus, and they said, hey, we caught this woman in the act of adultery. I'm thinking if I'm saying this incorrectly, please someone correct me. And Jesus said to the man, he who is without sin, let him cast the first stone. So again, this is another way of going through the criteria of karma, because again, this is mental action as well. So he caused them to reflect and just, you know, think about their own actions and their own moral obligations and their own sense of enjoyment or suffering just by asking a simple question using that criteria. So again, these are other instances where this criteria is used, whether we know whether the criteria is being used or not. Again, both the Honorable Elijah Muhammad and Yahshua or Jesus use this criteria to help people discern what is karmic, and or use this criteria for karma. I want to misspeak, but again, thank you for that, instructor.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, those were excellent examples. Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. All right, let's move on. Can somebody read these for me, please? These 3 verses from the Bhagavad Gita.
Chapter 3, Bhagavad Gita, Karma Yoga. Chapter 3, verse 6. One who restrains the senses and organs of action, but whose mind dwells on sense objects,
certainly deludes himself and is called a pretender. Chapter 3, verse 7. On the other hand, he who controls the senses by the mind and engages his active organs in works of devotion without attachment is by far superior. Chapter 3, verse 8. Perform your prescribed duty, for action is better than inaction. A man cannot even maintain his physical body without work.
Thank you. I appreciate that. So again, you can see another challenge or another layer of challenge being added on to this path of karma yoga. And hopefully this doesn't deter anybody from, the path of karma yoga, because I know a lot of people chose that as their particular self-expression. But, it just adds to the challenge of what's to be done in this particular path. So it says, one who restrains the senses and organs of action, i.e., feel, taste, touch, sight, etc. But the mind dwells on sense objects, certainly deludes himself, and is called a pretender. So that is a part of this whole path of selfishness, is that I remember the definition, or the what we call as ego. We say it's the soul identifying as the body, which is called the ego. And so when we identify ourselves as the body, we look for ways to please the senses, right? We look for good food and, whatever else to make our one expression of the divine, one small, teeny tiny expression of the divine. We look to make that thing happy. And so we use the sense organs and the organs of action to make that happy. And so this is saying that even if we restrain those senses, but our mind dwells on sense objects, we're still pretending, right? So it's still more work to be done, because we haven't necessarily chitta, vritti, nirodha, right? Or still the sensations of the mind, right? And this part to me was also very telling when he said, perform your prescribed duty, for action is better than inaction. A man cannot even maintain his physical body without work. And so his prescribed action was, remember, he was a householder. Arjuna was a householder. This is Krishna talking to Arjuna, who was a householder, but he was also of the warrior class, or the Kshetra, which we talked about as far as the Bhagavad Gita is concerned in the last class. So his prescribed duty was that of a warrior. So he told them to perform your prescribed duty, because remember, he didn't want to fight. He wanted to go and, sit in the mountain somewhere and not participate in the battle. But Krishna told him, perform your prescribed duty, for action is better than inaction. And he said, a man cannot even maintain his physical body without work. And so this speaks to, our responsibility of keeping our bodies healthy, because that is still karma yoga, to eat right, because we use our physical body to do the work. So if the body is not adequate or fit for duty, then we can't perform our prescribed duty or our action, i.e., we cannot do karma yoga to the best of our ability without maintaining this physical body to the best of our ability. So I thought a lot of this was very profound. John, you had a question? John, you there?
Yeah. I had to get to my phone. I got my headset on because I'm baking. Yeah. The thing about it is, I wanted to touch on um the warrior part of it because I've been taking Kempo, I've been just studying different forms of art and conditioning and whatnot. And I came across a black samurai. His name is Yasuke. They even made a Netflix cartoon about him. And the morals of the samurai and the principles of the samurai and that story you talking about is just like the cartoon. He basically witnessed his whole family get murdered, and they took pity on him. The whatever the guy was in charge, he was like, just kill him because we don't know what he is. We can't wash his skin off. And the man was like, he's a unique creature. We're gonna keep him because at the time he was a servant. And the man said, well, we're all servants. And he said, well, we at the time in Japan, they didn't have any I guess black people that were samurais because it was only three that I have researched in history. So anyway, long story short, they had a war and he had to go to war and his master told him, I might not make it because I want you to chop my head off. And he said, what you mean? He said, I failed you. I was not in charge and this war was on me. I caused the war. And he was like, but we gotta fight it. We can make it out. He said, no, I have already dishonored my title and my duty as a warrior. And I must repent or whatever, however he said it. And he said, you must chop my head off. I'm telling you, as your um master or whatever. And so he had to do it, and he still went out and fought. He became a Ronin, and the whole thing was it was all because this code, because he felt so much compassion for this code and these principles that he was willing to die for him, even kill for him, but he didn't want to fight at all. He never even liked fighting. He never even liked it at all. He said, I just want to be peaceful. He tried to run away to the mountains, and they came and got him because could nobody else tangle with the big boys but him because he was the old way and the new way was gunpowder and guns and stuff. And that's when China had their explosion during that time where they found different mechanisms and were doing a lot of inventions.
Oh yeah, thank you for that. Definitely correlates. And remember, truth is truth is truth. So, yeah, that's the code of the warrior. That was his prescribed duty. So he felt that he failed, and the ultimate punishment for that was death. So definitely get it. Uh, all right, we're gonna move on because definitely don't want to run out of time. Can somebody read this particular slide for me, please?
I
I
read
read.
it.
Okay.
All right. Chapter 3, verse 19. Therefore, without being attached to the fruits of activities, one should act as a matter of duty, for by working without attachment one attains the supreme.
Excellent. So, and you see this picture of Krishna and Arjuna
Yeah.
in the Bhagavad Gita. All right. So, going to this, which directly correlates to this. So you see our underlying fruits of activities. So where else do we hear about fruits? We hear about it in the Bible with Adam and Eve. So in his discourses about the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali, one of the people who translated as well as gave his discourse about the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali, his name was Sri Guru Dev, and he talked about this Adam and Eve story. So this is what he said. He said, if we take the surface meaning of things, we might be misled. Take the example of offering fruit at the altar. Who wants those fruits? Do you think God is going to eat them? It means offering the fruits of our actions to God. We are trees growing in nature, and all of our energy, our actions, our words, our thoughts are the fruits of our lives, which we must offer for the benefit of humanity in the name of God. This is where the term forbidden fruit in the Bible comes in. each of us is an Adam and an Eve because we want to eat the fruits of our actions, which we are forbidden to do. The biblical story doesn't mean that an Adam once lived who ate the forbidden fruit and now we are reaping his sins. We are doing the same thing here and now. Every scripture has its own esoteric meanings in story form. This is because in ancient times, they didn't want everybody to understand the subtle techniques and follow them without proper preparation. So we can see how, again, the correlations between the Bhagavad Gita and the Bible, and also that truth is truth, and this path of selfless action, not being attached to the fruits of activity. So hopefully
Instructor, can you just end the class right now? Just undo the Zoom, just shut it down, just cut it off. That was it right there. That was everything that they said.
Yeah, that was definitely a mic drop and definitely profound when I read it. So I was like, I gotta share that because that was deep and dope to me.
Instructor, can you go back to that previous slide before this picture, please?
Yep.
Thank you.
This one. Yeah, there you go.
That was my question I had asked you on Monday, so I got my answer.
Yep. Didn't I tell you? I said come to the class.
Thank you, instructor.
Yep, no problem. Anybody else? Questions, comments, anything about that? All right, can somebody get this slide for me, please?
Here, I'll take it. Chapter 3, verse 27. All activities are carried out by the three modes of material nature, but in ignorance, the soul, deluded by false identification with the body, thinks itself to be the doer.
Thank you. So this one is profound, and it also ties directly into this one. So remember, Sri Gurudev said that we are trees growing in nature. So what distinguishes us from a tree? So a tree grows, it produces fruit, et cetera, et cetera. So what puts that action in motion, right? Some intelligence. And so this says that but in ignorance, the soul, deluded by false identification with the body, thinks itself to be the doer. So you can see how our delusion is that we identify with the body. So we think that we are choosing to do said thing, right? And so remember, all the way back to the beginning, yoga is yoking of the individual consciousness with the supreme consciousness. So in I can't think of the name of it, but basically what it says is that nature doesn't do anything, but everything is done, right? So we falsely we are deluded in thinking that we are separate from nature. So the same way that the tree grows and the grass grows and whatever, everything happens on the earth, we are a part of that same process, but in ignorance, we think ourselves to be the doer because we have a false identification of and with the body. So we think that because we are quote unquote conscious, quote unquote intelligent, that we are separate from nature and that our actions are of our own. But in reality, it's all a part of the one cosmic intelligence. So in reality, we are yoked with that cosmic force, but our delusion leads us to believe that we are not. So we falsely identify with the body. Can somebody get this slide for me?
I get it.
Go ahead.
The Bhagavad Gita Karma Yoga, chapter 3, verse 42. The senses are superior to the gross body, and superior to the senses is the mind. Beyond the mind is the intellect, and even beyond intellect is the soul. Chapter 3, verse 43. Thus, knowing the soul to be superior to the material intellect, Almighty Ajahn subdue the self, senses, minds, and intellect by the self strength of the soul and kill formidable enemy called lust. Wow.
So you can see how this is a continuation of this. So in ignorance, the soul deluded by false identification with the body thinks itself as the doer. And then this is telling you that the senses are superior to the gross body. So the gross body is our material self that we call us. And then we have senses that are signals that allow the gross body, or not signals, but interfaces that allow the gross body to interact with what we call the outside world or our environment. And then superior to that is the mind. And then superior to that is the intellect. And then superior to the intellect is the soul. So we see here that the soul is deluded by the false identification with the body. And then this shows that the supreme is the soul that's at the top. That's the head honcho. And so this slide shows you that, or this verse shows you that the two things that are being yoked together are the self and the self. The senses, the mind, and the intellect are one self, and the soul is the other self. But it is through our ignorance that we falsely identify with the body, and now we seek to please this body, aka the senses, the mind, and the intellect, through selfishness, aka lust. And not a lust as in like, man woman type of lust, but a lust as in lust to satisfy the senses, the mind, and the intellect. So the self is subdued by the self to kill the formidable enemy called lust. So hopefully that gave y'all some chills right there. So somebody got a question or a comment? We got about 15 minutes left, and we definitely gonna get through this. But yep, go ahead, Keela.
Yeah, sorry. So it's kind of crazy how we go to this slide, and the first word that I noticed was the ego, because on the last slide I was thinking directly about the id, ego, and superego. Psychologically, where the id is basically our basic senses that we have with us from birth, and then the superego is, in a sense, just for lack of better words, who we want to be, the mind that keeps us in check for, what we think of our higher self. And then the ego is what we want everyone else to think of us. And knowing yourself and just acting off of basic sense of urges, and then like having to stop yourself, which is like noticing that formidable lust, I feel, knowing that you shouldn't have that, and then the ego saying that you should. I don't know. I think it's interesting. I was just linking that to the id, the ego, and the super ego, and that's all I wanted to say.
Yeah, that's an excellent correlation. Thank you. Which is, more Freudian psychology. So yeah, thank you. Anybody else questions or comments about that before we move on? All right. Somebody get this slide for me, please. We're gonna speed through these last couple.
Karma yoga diminishes the ego and helps dissolve any sense of separation between self and other. Acting this way is believed to purify the mind, and is considered the most virtuous approach to service. Although volunteering one's time and effort is a common example of karma yoga, the concept teaches that all actions, even the most mundane, can become part of one's spiritual path. It is considered the attitude to the action rather than the action itself, which makes something karma yoga. The essence of the practice is to act with the right motives in the right way to the best of one's ability, but surrendering attachments to the outcome.
Perfect. Thank you. I appreciate that. We're gonna skip this super long slide because it basically says the exact same thing that this one says, but just with more words. And we can read this part in the Bhagavad Gita though. Can somebody read that for me?
For the concentrations is better than mere practice, and meditation is better than concentration. But higher than meditation is sonder in love, or surrender in love.
Surrender, yeah.
It's surrender in love of the fruits of one's action. For the surrender follows peace. Bhagavad Gita, chapter 12, verse 12. Okay, so I got a question then, because it's saying right there to surrender in love in one's fruits of the action. But just a minute ago, it said separate the feelings of an emotion from the action.
So this is the thing. So I'm so glad you said that, because I'm sure a lot of people had this question. And it's because we have love as a feeling when love is not a feeling. So this is saying surrender in love of the fruits of one's actions. So meaning that love supersedes the outcome or our attachment to the outcome. And when we surrender that attachment, peace is what's to follow.
I'm sorry, instructor. That just confused me even more. You lost me then. We was good up until that turn, because the fruits of what you do is the feeling that give you pleasure. Like she said, when I went to church and I gave this because from the heart, because I felt good from it. So, and then at first it said, you don't care what the outcome is, just do it because that's what you're doing. Okay, so now it's saying, okay, I don't know. It don't make sense. I'm lost in that.
Just let's take love out of the context of a feeling. So as of, again, we are yoked inside of this construct. And the construct tells you that love is a feeling when love is not a feeling. So that's all I'm saying here, is that love is not a feeling, and it's not used as a feeling in this particular sense. in this chapter and verse is not a feeling. So this is actually going to be the bridge to our next week with Bhakti Yoga, which is love and devotion. But just for now, just know that love is not a feeling.
Yeah. And if
All
I
right.
can offer instructor here before we move on.
Yep, go ahead.
Your point, love is not, I'm reading something here, so just bear with me. Love is not an emotion. It doesn't behave the way emotions do. When we love truly, we can experience all of our free-flowing mood state and intense emotions, including fear, rage, hatred, grief, and shame, while continuing to love and honor our loved ones. Love isn't the opposite of fear or anger or any other emotion.
That shit going.
So
How that shit been going?
so it speaks to just what you offered there, instructor, in love being the most misunderstood word in the world, because all of us put love in the construct of emotion. That's how we're taught. That's part of the curriculum that's actually driving us. So, John, to your point, that's why it's so confusing. Especially when we equate love with being an emotion. So it speaks to instructor's point. Thank you.
Instructor, may I offer just one piece to make it reconcile for many of us, and that and then I'm not confronting, just offering. Instead of saying what love is not, how about we say that love is beyond that? Because love is all encompassing. So something like what we call God, that all things live in God and through God. Can we also allow us to have the recognition that within love and beyond the construct of emotion, love exists, but also that pleasure or that feel good or that connecting element that we associate with emotion is also embodied in love. So to say that love is not a feeling is very off-putting and leaves us in limbo, but I'm hoping that we can say that love is beyond just a feeling and then capture all of its essence. How does that resonate with you two?
Well, I understand what you're saying. However, in offering what we have offered, it is going to challenge the very construct in which we were formed in, which is why I keep referring to we are all raised in a curriculum that supports that. So when one offers the idea that love is not an emotion, it goes right against the fiber of the construct in which bore us all. So to instructor's point, when he says that love is not an emotion, it actually challenges the very notion of the concept of love, which is misunderstood, which is why we did not want that word in the metaphysical formula for power, because it is a shift in thinking. Again, this is going to cause, as we call it, in our world, a cognitive dissonance, which is going to challenge the very premise of how you formulate your thinking around such a concept. So again, I understand your point. However, this is about challenging the very constructs which we formulate a concept of self about.
I say, instructor. Duly noted and respected. Yes, sir.
Yeah, and if I could just chime in too, we only got 5 minutes left, and we definitely want to get through this. But one thing that I did want to say was that, because I seen somebody in the chat said, "Can we just say love is harmony?" And so, what we are doing now is a different form of deduction, and it's called retroduction. So instead of us saying what love is, we can say what love is not, and then everything else is what love is. And not saying that we went through everything that love is not, but if I say love is this, then people are going to run with that definition and say, oh yeah, I know what love is, and it's going to put it into a proverbial box that it doesn't belong in. So I just want to leave it at what love is not, so that way we can leave it open for what love is. And we're going to go in more about it next week in Bhakti Yoga. So with 4 minutes left, let's get through these last ones. All right. The ideal man is he who, in the midst of the greatest silence and solitude, finds the intensest activity, and in the midst of the intensest activity, finds the silence and solitude of the desert. He has learned the secret of restraint. He has controlled himself. He goes through the streets of a big city with all of its traffic, and his mind is as calm as if he were in a cave where not a sound could reach him, and he is intensely working all the time. That is the ideal of karma yoga. And if you have attained to that, you have really learned the secret of work. And that's Swami Vivekananda. And to speak to that, we got this Bhagavad Gita verse, chapter 2, verse 20. It says, the one who has trained the mind to stay centered in equanimity in life has cast aside both good and evil karma. Therefore, by means practice yoga, karma yoga is perfection in action. Karma yoga, therefore, is a system of ethics intended to attain freedom through unselfishness and by good works. The karma yogi need not believe in any doctrine, whatever. He may not even believe in God, or may not ask what the soul is, nor think of any metaphysical speculation. He has got his own special aim of realizing selflessness, and he has to work it out himself. Every moment of his life must be realization, because he has to solve by mere work, without the help of doctrine or theory, the same problem to which the jnani applies his reason and inspiration, and the bhakta applies his love. So this is somebody who practices bhakti yoga. This is somebody who practices jnana yoga. We go to Buddha. He said, when everyone was talking about going to heaven, Gautama the Buddha said, you say everything is fine in heaven, so what will I do there? Let me go to hell and do something to help others, because anyway, I cannot suffer. Hopefully that resonated with y'all. And then we have a parable of the monk and the scorpion. Can somebody read this one for me, please?
I got you. Two monks were washing their bowls in the river when they noticed a scorpion that was drowning. One monk immediately scooped it up and set it upon the bank. In the process, he was stung. He went back to washing his bowl, and again the scorpion fell in. The monk saved the scorpion and was again stung. The other monk asked him, friend, why do you continue to save the scorpion when you know its nature is to sting? Because, the monk replied, to save is my nature.
Excellent, thank you. And we're gonna close this out with 2 quotes. So can somebody get this one for me, please? Instructor Arku, can you get this one? This one really like resonated with me for you. So if you could read that one for me, please. Huh?
Repeat that. Can I do what?
I said, can you read this slide, because this resonates with me about you.
Okay. this is the true joy in life, being used for a purpose recognized by yourself as a mighty one, being a force of nature instead of a selfish little clod of ailments and grievances, complaining that the world will not devote itself to making you happy. I am of the opinion that my life belongs to the whole community. As long as I live, it is my privilege to do it. It is my privilege to do for it what I can. I want to be thoroughly used up when I die, for the harder I work, the more I live. I rejoice in life for its own sake. Life is no brief candle to me. It is a short and splendid torch, which I have got hold of for the moment, and I want to make it burn as brightly as possible before handing it on to future generations. George Bernard Shaw. Ashe. Man, thank you, man. If that makes you think about me, brother, I am honored. Thank you, sir.
No, thank you. And last one, can somebody read this Bhagavad Gita verse for me? And then we go into the homework.
I would like to.
Go ahead.
Karma Yoga in summary. The one who sees an action in the midst of action, an action in the midst of action, is wise. It cannot act in the, or it can act in the spirit of yoga, with no desire for success, no anxiety about failure, indifferent to results. This person burns up their actions in the fire of wisdom, surrendering all thoughts of outcome, unperturbed, self-reliant. This person does nothing at all, even when fully engaged in actions. There is nothing this person expects, nothing that this person fears. Serene, free from possessions, untainted, acting with the body alone, content with whatever happens, unattached to pleasure or pain, success or failure. This person acts and is never bound by those actions. When a person has to let go of attachments and is grounded within wisdom, and is grounded in wisdom, everything this person does is an act of sacred joy, and all actions melt away. Bhagavad Gita, chapter 4, verse 18 through 22.
Excellent. Thank you. I appreciate that. And that brings us to the homework. So this is the homework. In Karma Yoga, the aspirant dissolves their identification with the body and mind by identifying with the whole of life, forgetting the finite self in service of others. And we're going to make a paradigm shift here. So instead of making life the pursuit of happiness and joy, make life the expression of happiness and joy. So the homework is to intentionally practice karma yoga, and then we're going to report out on the experience next Tuesday. All right. So with that being said, I am complete. So I'm gonna stop the recording, and then if anybody has any questions, comments, or anything, we can address those right here. Definitely appreciate you all being here, and let me stop this recording real fast.